Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Stadium Journey podcast. Thanks for joining us this evening. Be sure, after you listen to the podcast, to check out our website, stadiumjourney.com. We are the world leader in sports travel information. The new site, I already said it, stadiumjourney.com. I love it so much, I had to say it twice. If you want to follow us on social media, and I know you do, we are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and starting now, Threads. Find us at Stadium Journey. Like, share, and follow. Hey, I was on Instagram the other day, and I had my number, your member number, whatever, on Threads. Like, all right, that's ridiculous.
Well, what the hell are you talking about?
You didn't see it? Well, go to Instagram, and it'll give you a number. You are member number, whatever. I was 2 million and something on Threads. But anyway, the point of my statement was Stadium Journeys on Threads. To check out video simulcasts of the Stadium Journey podcast, simply type in HIAC Talk Radio Network wherever you find your favorite podcasts, and we'll be there. If you would like to watch the podcast, check out our YouTube channel, again, at Stadium Journey. And if you want to be part of our studio audience, join us live every other Tuesday night at 7 Eastern. That's when we record. You can find us at danlaw.tv. Let me take a second before we get going and introduce the starting lineup. Dave Cotney's here. Follow him at ProFan9. Mark Viquez can be found at Ballpark Hunter. The above-average comedian Dan Calachico's here. Follow him at DanLaw83. And I'm Paul Baker. You can follow me at PuckmanRI. So our topic tonight, we got a couple hockey Christians on our panel. Some big news came out of Quebec this week. The QMJHL, the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League, put in some strict rules regarding fighting, some new rules. And everybody's up in arms over it because some people are saying, maybe they're just, what do you call those? Not Pollyannas. What's the opposite of a Pollyanna? Chicken Little? They're saying that it will lead to the elimination of fighting in hockey. So, panel, are we nervous about these new rules? Are we excited? Should I start by saying what these new fighting measures are for the Q?
Yeah, let's hear about it.
All right, let's start with that. Okay, so as part of the leagues, this is from the Hockey News, folks. As part of the league's new safety regulations for the upcoming season, the QMJHL has formally announced they will ban fighting. They're not banning it, though. They will heavily punish any and all who do not follow the league protocols. So let's see. Where are the protocols? Okay. So as soon as a fight occurs, those engaged must be systematically ejected from the game. So you fight, you're out. Any player... What's that?
A game misconduct.
Yes. Any player found to have instigated the fight will also receive an automatic 1-game suspension.
Minimum. Automatic minimum 1-game suspension.
The person declared to be the aggressor during the fight will receive a minimum of 2 automatic games of suspension. So can you be the instigator but not the aggressor? Or does being
I have no idea what the difference is, actually.
He punched me first, but then I punched him 10 times, so I was the aggressor. In addition to the game misconduct, an automatic game suspension is imposed, starting with the player's second fight of the season. The suspension is in addition to the sanctions described in the preceding paragraphs. All righty, so that's the new fighting measures in the Q. Good thing, bad thing, indifferent? Are we looking at the end of fighting? Go, Dan. I don't think that had the desired effect.
That was no, it totally did. I don't know what to say anymore. I mean, it's not like this has been a secret at the bigger levels for years.
Right.
That's pretty much frowned upon. Of all the things that they eliminated after all that stuff came out about head trauma, the fighting is what they went for. And other things will always confuse and baffle me and befuddle me and befoo me. I don't know.
Oh, I can answer that part, Dan.
Yeah, good.
Bob Probert, Derek Bugard, Wade Belak, Steve Montador.
Yep.
That's why they went after fighting. Those guys are all dead.
And more.
Oh,
I wasn't questioning that. I've been.
We're not talking about grown men here in the queue. We're talking about 16-year-old kids up to 20. What's it? What are they? 16 to 20 in the juniors, Dave?
Yeah, you can. Each team can have. Well, you get drafted at 16, I think you can, if you're 16, you can be drafted in the first 2 rounds. And there's a limited number of 16-year-olds that could be on a team, but you can be 16. Actually, you could be 15. There have been cases of 15. So guys like Shane Wright and Connor McDavid, who else? I believe John Tavares. You could get a special exemption to play at 15. So, yeah, I mean, we're not talking about 20 or 30-year-olds here.
Right. When I talk about grown men, and anytime I think you can limit a few knocks to the head of a growing brain, I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, I see that too.
I've with some good friends, guys have become good friends on the Fourth Line Voice. And,
Yep.
Five for Fighting. Who really the ECHL really tried to F with that guy, and eventually he won.
Really nice. Good for him.
Oh yeah. They were like, "You're banned. That's it. We're banning your stuff." And they were like, "Just kidding. Nobody else promotes this league."
Exactly. Yeah.
That's what our point was. Like, why are they banning you? Nobody else talks about this league. Nobody's watching this highlight video except me. I've been at odds about fighting. It's 50-50. I don't know if I could. I don't know if I can live with hockey without fighting, but at the same time, Dave just named a few. Can't deny that there's some sort of a correlation between the two things. And I do think at one point, yes, health is more important than scrapping. You want to do it at those, there's those cool ice MMA tournaments. I say MMA, they're not kicking with skates on, going on right now. Go for it. I think we have evolved a bit enough as a race to maybe not make that the most important thing. Perhaps, I don't know. Just my 2 cents.
Yeah, and like you're getting back to it, developing these young players. There are some people who are listening to this podcast that may not know everything about junior hockey. Yeah, these are 16, 17, 18-year-old kids whose brains aren't developed yet, even with critical thinking. And you're getting hit and punched in the face. And, I don't know how much fighting was taking place in the queue.
I can answer that question, Mark.
Yeah.
Okay, these stats come from Ian Kennedy from the Hockey News.
Nice.
So for context, last season there were 161 fights in 612 QMJHL games last year. That's one fight for every 3.8 games. So another way to look at that is about 15 seconds out of every 228 minutes of hockey. So it comes to about one fight every 2 weeks for each team.
Yeah, so it's not like it was out of control, back in the 70s when we had the Broad Street Bullies, or, people were watching hockey just to see the fights. It's something that doesn't happen all the time. I mean, I'm okay with it. I think what's the goal here? You want to watch your team win, or you want to see a fight? Is it something that's going to go into the Western League in Ontario? Maybe, if it's something successful. And you're right, it's all about evolving. Do you have to have fighting in baseball? Do you have to have fighting in hockey? Just like,
yes.
Do you need to being a guy in the head in baseball to settle out a difference? That's a topic. Be more than happy to discuss that.
Well, with regards to the leagues, the Q is actually, I would say, historically has been, out of the 3 Canadian junior leagues that make up the Canadian Hockey League, the Q is the least known for fighting. It's always been like the little fast guys, high scoring, like the highest scoring players in the CHL always came from the Q. Well, not always, but like the record holders, Pat LaFontaine, Mario Lemieux, like those guys all played in the Q. Yeah, the Q was always known for, superstar goalies and little fast guys, right? So, whether this comes out west or not, that would be a little bit of a different story, I guess. But the key to all of this is that they're kids, and don't forget it's a business, right? And they work on two sides. So of course you're trying to sell your product to people watching, right? You're trying to get people to come to Quebec City or Halifax or Chicoutimi or wherever. You're trying to get people in your building, watch your product. You also have to supply players. Well, there's competition for those players out there. So if I'm a parent and I have a kid who's going to go somewhere in hockey, do I want to send them to a junior league where he could get his head beat in?
Yeah.
Or do I want to send them to college hockey in the States where I know they already don't have fighting?
And they wear cages.
There has been no fighting in NCAA hockey in years and years. All right, so I guess the big question is for fans of, well, maybe the other junior leagues or even pro leagues. Do you think this could spread? This kind of, I wouldn't call it a ban, but just short of a ban. Will it spread to other leagues? Do the fans who watch hockey just for the fights, should they be worried that they're not going to see fights anymore?
Yeah, it's, I remember looking at something from look at some CBS film from 1969, 68 about college players having to wear helmets. And a lot of the old time NHL players were like, this will never happen in the NHL. They'll never mandate it. So, and then, in 1979, it was mandated, I believe.
And now face guards are mandated.
Now face guards. So yeah, you don't know. You don't know 10, 12 years from now, NHL may not have fighting. I know some traditionalists will be upset with that. I know that's a way that players enforce some of the nonsense going on the ice. It's a way you solve some problems. If you could have some guys running their mouths and saying stuff about your mom and yourself, instigating things, knowing that you can't throw a punch at them. How are you going to force things? It's going to be a new way of doing it. So it's interesting to think about. I'm not sure what to say. I understand Dave, being a parent. Yeah, I'd rather have my kid play in the queue because I'm not worried about him fighting and getting injured because of a stupid fight. Even though I don't even know what the rate of that is. Do you have that information in front of you? How many injuries has someone sustained?
No, that I don't have.
Or stitches or broken jaws.
Yeah, I think with fighting, it's the long term, right? Like all these guys that we mentioned from the NHL, like they were all the long term. They were all the head trauma, the head injuries, leading to depression, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, it's the numbers are going to be tough to put together with regards to junior hockey. I think when we think about, is this going to travel to the NHL or whatever is going to have an impact? I think there's two things we need to think about. Number one, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but it is undeniable that fighting has decreased drastically in the NHL, from the 70s where it was probably at its peak down, the 80s.
I would argue that the 90s had more fights than the 70s.
Could be. I guess in the 90s you had like the whole, Ty Domi and the heavyweight champion
every team had their enforcer. In the 70s, there was more guys who played and fought.
Yeah.
The thing I do miss is the bench clearer brawls. Those were fun.
But like that, those numbers have gone down. Has the popularity of hockey decreased over that time? I would say that it's increased. I would say that the metrics are showing that, outside of a few sort of minor spots, the buildings are as full as they've ever been. There's far fewer weak sisters in the league than there have ever been. The ratings seem to be fine. They have a national TV contract with ESPN. Of course, there's the Canadian one, so that hasn't changed. So I don't feel that a decrease in fighting has decreased the popularity of hockey or of NHL hockey. Let's go with that. Secondly, if we go back to the 70s to the early 70s, 60s, the NBA was full of fights
I miss basketball fights.
Yeah, but no real fights. Like,
I miss real basketball fights.
Yeah.
You forget I'm old enough to have watched those games.
Until Kermit Washington punched Rudy Tomjanovich
that's
in the
not what
eye.
ended it. That's not what ended it. Because in the 80s, there were fights every game, man.
Not
Malice,
not to
Malice
the
in the Palace ended it. Malice in the Palace ended it.
Well, I mean, yeah, basketball looked different back in the 70s. You could even watch it live on TV here in the States. It was on after the news, local news, which is shocking, with me growing up.
Hey, the Celtics championship in 1981, the first one they had with Larry Bird, was shown on tape delay.
Yeah, tape delay.
At 11:30 at night after the news, like you said.
But yeah, no, I see where Dave's coming from. You're looking at the brawling in the 70s, and if you talk to some other folks, like the Knicks of the 90s were a rough and tumble team. You had the bad boys. Yeah, you're right. The Malice at the Palace did and all that. But yeah, Dave, on your point, you're right. We could look at the decades and analyze them and say, well, this was how it was, and then this ended it. So yeah, I see your point. That's a good observation.
Old time hockey.
Putting on the foil, coach.
Yeah.
Eddie Shore. Toe Blake.
Old time best.
Do you know what's funny about that line is Eddie Shore was one of the dirtiest players ever.
Yeah.
Indeed he was. Yeah, Ace Bailey. That was Eddie Shore.
What was that TV movie on Don Cherry when he was the coach?
Oh, yeah.
The stuff he would do to his players, like tie a rope around their neck or in the goal.
Well, if you think about it, where else do you have essentially unregulated bare knuckle fighting? I mean, they started that in MMA, and then they had to add like safety features to it, right? So they all have to wear gloves now or whatever, but there's nothing else like that. I always thought it was funny when, the guys would get ready to get into a fight, and the first thing they do is they take their helmet off. Here, let me allow you a better target for my face.
Now, aren't there measures to penalize someone who tries to take off your opponent's helmet during a fight now?
Well, in senior A hockey, there's a team called the Whitby Dunlops. You may have heard of them, Paul, because Harry Sinden played for the Whitby Dunlops, and they they were like the last Canadian team to win the Olympics. And then he, of course, went into 72 as the coach and against.
I may have heard a team from before when I was born.
Yeah, totally. So anyway, the team still existed. There was a guy who actually died on that team, and I want to say it was maybe about 15 to 20 years ago. And basically what he did is he got into a fight, took his helmet off. The guy punched him. He fell back, hit his head against the ground, knocked him out. They brought the stretcher out. He kind of came back. He wanted to go back and play and fight. They had him on the stretcher. They took him away. He died on the way to the hospital. So the response was that it was a match penalty if you actually take your helmet off.
Well, you think about, remember the incident with Marty McSorley when he hit, was it Peter Worrell that he hit with his stick that really kind of ended McSorley's career? Worrell didn't get hurt from the stick. He got hurt because his helmet came off and he hit the ice, the back of his head. So, yeah.
I remember the incident. I'm not thinking I don't think you have the victim right.
Was it Donald Brashear?
Could have been Brashear.
Yeah, you know what? Brashear sounds right now. I don't know. I remember Peter O'Reilly in the AHL, man. He was a large man.
But I think you're kind of onto another piece, which would be, what the pundits would say is how, we need fighting in the game to curtail like the stick work, the slashing and the hooking and all that kind of stuff.
Really? Because the incident that I talked about was someone using his stick to try to start a fight.
Well, I think it was using the stick because there was no fight, and he was mad.
Exactly. He's like, come on, fight me.
But yeah, but the the other piece of that is well, why have they been doing it all this time, right? Well, in the 80s, it was you had Dave Semenko who would, if you looked at Gretzky the wrong way, then you'd have to, eat Dave Semenko's knuckles or whatever. But there is there is the contingent that says that, well, we need to have fighting, because without it, then there's all the slashing and then there's the hooking. So that's the part. That's how you win over the players.
Mark brought up that same point a little while ago. Is it really true? Do you think that kind of stuff happens more now? Or do we just say it happens more as a way to rationalize the fighting?
I don't know if it happens more, but I do know that you have to have a response to the slashing and the hooking to appease the players, who are the ones that have to put it all into play, right? So,
what do the players say about this? Are the players in favor of less fighting? Do they want to keep fighting in the game? What do they want? I don't know if we're asking them.
I got to be honest. I've never heard a player say that they wanted to get rid of fighting. Never.
I don't want to get rid of fighting totally either. I like it. I like a good scrap every once in a while. But as a rational human being, you see what happens to some of these guys who've taken one too many shots to the head. So how do you balance all that out?
I'm not afraid to say I have like zero use for fighting. It does nothing for me. I'm probably the only guy still sitting in his chair when there's a fight that breaks out. I don't know. Maybe I'm the one that's looking a little bit further and going, well, what could actually happen to this guy who's in the fight? And then what happens, But you're the psychologist. I mean, is there a bigger manifestation of kind of mob mentality than when a hockey fight breaks out?
Yes, there is.
Or anything else. I mean, go look at the footage of the Malice of the Palace and listen. Well, what do you hear? You hear them. Everybody's cheering. Everybody's all up on their feet. They're all excited.
Yeah.
Does that mean we want basketball players to be jumping into the stands? Well, no, of course not.
But I think the reason why it gets such a reaction is because it's the exception. It's not the rule.
Mm-hmm.
It's something different.
Yeah. No, I remember years ago going to the Trenton Titans game with someone, and as soon as they started fighting, she jumped out of her seat. Like, she could care less about the hockey game. But there was a couple fights, and
well, that's what they were marketing, though.
Yeah, she got excited. She was like, oh, out of her seat. I'm like, oh, wow, she's alive. Okay, so
I think there's a segment of hockey fandom that thinks that way, Mark, and does not want to see fights go away and wants to see that actually go back to the way it was in the 90s when there were staged fights and all this other stuff.
Yeah, and then, I heard something else about this new rule is, if you have a guy on your team who's a scrub, nothing special, you can afford to be without him. Is he going to try to instigate, your opponent's superstar, try to get him into fighting so he gets kicked out, especially during playoffs? Is that something that can happen?
That's why you had guys like Dave Semenko in the past.
I think the other thing that sort of helped change this sort of narrative is just the sheer size of players. Right. So, you don't have as many guys who are built like Gretzky was, this, lithe, skinny little guy. Right. Your superstars are big guys now. And, maybe that started with kind of Eric Lindros and he was one of the guys that really put it all together, put the size with the skill and brought it to a whole new level. But, I don't see, you've seen Sidney Crosby mix it up. You've seen, Austin Matthews is not a small guy. So having the big guy protecting the little guy, well, I mean, the little guy's almost been eliminated as it is.
know if I totally agree with you there, but yeah, the role of the protector is definitely gone. And yeah, and anytime somebody like a Crosby or a Matthews or McDavid takes a big hit, that's what you hear online is, oh, he's a target because you can't protect him anymore like you used to.
Well, I don't know.
But there's that's the bloodlust segment of the fandom coming out. So
you hear the same thing when there's a dust up in football. Now, football, it's funny because, you know, how stupid do you have to be to start taking swings at guys with face masks and helmets on? You know,
I don't know.
You're just gonna hurt yourself. But you know, Paul, you had some interesting info on you and Mark both had some interesting info on the Quebec government's involvement.
Yeah, Mark brought that up before we started taping. So
Yeah.
You said that this might have some financial and political ramifications, not just the league itself cracking down.
Yeah, it came after the government provided $2 million per team to help during the pandemic. And one of the conditions stipulated was that there'd be no more fighting. Well, that was a few years ago. So here we are with this new rule. So, yeah.
Is that information been confirmed, or is that something we're just kind of reading?
I'm reading this off of sportskeeda.com. It's also was on TSN. I'm sorry, not TSN, sportsnet.com. I mean, .ca. CTV News Atlantic. So
that's
well, you can absolutely understand and see why the government would not want their teenagers in sanctioned fighting events. So if they're providing a little bit of money, they could be applying the pressure politically on this league.
I think it might be too. It might be one of those, you know, oh, okay, yeah, sure, no problem. We'll get rid of fighting. $2 million, yeah, sure, no problem.
Yeah, I mean, it says
we're gonna kind of do that anyway.
It's almost like you scratch my back, you scratch my back. You do a favor for me, I do a favor for you. Okay, I call you up at 2 a.m. You meet me down at the docks.
I mean, and hockey. Let's be real. Hockey's heading in that direction anyway. Fighting is decreasing at all levels. I mean, we gave the stats before that. The average team in the Q is getting into one fight every 2 weeks. Toronto. So they play what, 3 games a week?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
So
and if you think about it, like what's the trickle up effect, right? So if there's no fighting in junior, there's already no fighting in college.
No.
Is it the Europeans? We're gonna be getting Europeans to come over as fighters, or where else?
Fighting in Europe?
Where else do they come? No, they're not really. Where else are they going to come from? Though
they'll be fighting in the Federal Hockey League,
Federal Hockey League,
or the Southern Professional.
The Quebec Senior League is always going to be fighting.
Yeah, it's interesting. Could this, could we be talking on this show? Hopefully, 10, 12 years from now, we're all still doing this. Maybe we'll have a live simulcast on a major network.
By that time, you'll just beam it right into your brain.
It'll beam it right to your brain. Yeah. I mean, could we say, hey, remember that conversation we had about the Q ending fighting? Yeah.
No, you can have virtual fighting, no concussions.
Yeah, virtual fighting.
Now, when you're playing hockey video games, was the fighting of interest? I mean, now. Dan can't really answer.
All right, guys. So I'm a good 10 years older than everybody else on this panel. When I was playing, I played the Atari with the 2 guys and the 1 stick. Did you ever see that game?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That was my first. But the Nintendo ice hockey game was the best one, where you could choose the tall, skinny guy, the medium-sized guy, or the big fat guy.
Yeah, that was fun.
And so we spent our whole game trying to start fights. So yeah, we were all about the fights. Then there was Blades of Steel. I had a little good fight cutaway scene.
Yeah, what was it? NHL 95 was like the first game I remember on the Sega. Or was
that the one where Jeremy Roenick was the superstar and you could give Wayne Gretzky a concussion where he bleed all over the ice?
Yeah, if you ever saw the movie Swingers, there's a scene where they're playing the game. And it's like, come on, make Gretzky. I don't know if I'm quoting this right. Make Gretzky's head bleed or something. Yeah. Yeah, I had a buddy who quoted that all the time. I kind of forget what it was. Let me see. NHL.
Well, I mean, with the video games, it was really simple. I was so bad at fighting. Forget it. Like I never played I mean, I did play some fighting games, but I was terrible at them. So forget it.
Okay, so
and I wanted all these little fast guys on my team anyway that could.
Yeah. So let's look at it this way. So if fighting does eventually go the way of the dodo bird and become a thing of the past, how will you be able to intimidate in hockey? Because the intimidation factor is still real, and it is still there, and it's still needed. You can't impose your will on your opponent in a game like hockey. What form does that take without fighting? Or how do you counteract the cheap stuff? How did they counteract the cheap stuff in the days before fighting was a big part of hockey?
Well, I mean, some of your best players were that rough, right? Like the Gordie Howe hat trick,
Which is really a misnomer. Gordie Howe had one Gordie Howe hat trick in his career.
Yeah, I know. I heard that too. But it was legendary.
I remember talking to like Milk Schmidt years and years ago, and I asked him about fighting and stuff, and he says we never really fought. But we were talking about Eddie Shore a little while ago and how dirty he was. I mean, he almost killed Ace Bailey swinging his stick at him.
Yep.
He probably deserved a knuckle or two in retaliation. So, I mean, none of us were on to watch hockey back then to say how did they handle that kind of stuff back then.
It was a different time though, too, right? Like,
well, Mel Schmidt was one of the best players in the league. He was like 5'6", 145 pounds.
I don't know that. Well, I mean, your average size in like everything, the average size of your player has just gotten bigger, right?
Yeah.
I just feel like the best players now are much bigger than they used to be, and that space has shrunk, where the big tough guys are this much bigger than the skill guys. Well, in basketball, how do you?
I was just going to say that the same that you were talking about basketball for. The allegory goes the same for basketball. The court, everybody's getting bigger. You got 7-footers who can play the perimeter and launch up threes. Every once in a while, people say, "Well, should we raise the basket in basketball, or should we widen the court in basketball?"
Right, but in the same sentence, you've got guys like, Charles Oakley saying, "Yeah, LeBron James would have never survived in our era because we would have taken his head off." Or
LeBron James is bigger than any of those guys. What are you talking about?
I know
the best players would be the best players in any era.
Yeah, I think you have to, like, to impose your will. You gotta make people suffer on the score sheet, right?
Will there be a physical way to do it though?
Pure and simple. I guess
my question. Yeah. They always. I mean that cliche has been around forever. The best way to make your opponent pay is score on the power play, right?
Yeah.
But I think there'll still be a way to big hits. Do you kill them with speed and finesse? Do
you change the power play back to the old way?
Unlimited goals?
Yeah.
I don't know. Referees are reluctant. I think
there does have to be a focus on the, like, from the refs on the slashing, on the hooking. Like they do have to make a conscious effort. And I'm not saying it's the refs because, they get their orders from above. Hey, this year we're calling this a little bit more. We're breaking down that. But if you've ever heard a referee in an interview, they always talk about the flow of the game, controlling the game and whatnot. And their calls morph to whatever it needs to be, right?
Sure. All right, I guess we didn't really answer my question, but I don't know if I have an answer to my questions.
Well, obviously you're and actually I'd like to see this because now one thing that is happening now more now than ever before is if somebody gets hit, it's like it's offensive, right? You know, if somebody takes a body check, then they're all pushing and shoving it up in their face, right? Right? Like, well, just turn around and you know, file it in the back of your head and hit the guy next time. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know how it changes. How's it changed now?
How has it changed now in recent years? The fighting's not there. You see a lot of pushing and shoving. You see a lot of chirping. That might be the biggest difference. There is the mouth, the talking. At least it's a little more apparent now.
Now, I hate to actually go to the basketball model, but there's like, is there a sport with more chirping than basketball? Like, I would be afraid to bring my wife and have her sit courtside because she has to listen to these guys, right? Like,
there, as someone who does, I do some work for college basketball teams. Even, I'm at the D3 level and not a super conference in the D3, middle of the road conference. Yeah, those guys chirp all game at that level, and it's almost it's a game within the game. You not only want to win the game, but you want to win the battle of the words too. So I'm sure it's the same in hockey. You'd look at a guy like Brad Marchand.
Your fave.
Yeah, the new next captain of the Bruins.
Well, he's like the longest serving now, isn't he?
And it's not even close.
Yeah, I was going to say.
What's he captain of? Nobody? Everybody's leaving.
They got guys, just all different ones. The Bruins will actually be okay. They still got their core.
I don't know. It's a little early to talk preseason hockey.
Here's a hot take.
I don't know. I just got an email from a team saying 2 months till the season starts.
Oh yeah.
I have a hot take for you.
What's that?
I haven't missed fighting.
Dan, I gotta agree with you on that one.
And I don't mean that as in an insulting way to fight fans. I don't like, oh, miss it, you idiots. I just haven't missed it.
Yeah, I don't.
When I want my fight fill, I will go to Fourth Line Boys and watch his YouTube channel and just binge that.
All right, yes. So I just thought of. Go ahead, Dan. I want to let you.
Go ahead.
Because I think I got a way to wrap up our discussion here. So
also, Gregory Koch says hockey fight simulator. I'm down for that. I'll go to watch
AI fighting.
I'll go to watch my old Flyers DVDs and stuff that I've bootlegged, like the Phantoms stuff. I have Titans. I have a bunch of Titans season wrap up videos because of Darren, Fourth Line Voice, that I've burned to DVD that I'm now upscaling.
Nice.
Yeah, it's gonna be good stuff.
But sports like boxing are dying out.
As far as now, I don't care.
Yeah.
And I mean that in the most innocuous way possible to hockey fight fans. I get it. I get why you're mad. I get why you're saying the things you're saying about hockey. Totally get it. For me, I have problems with the other things that I won't bring up here with certain teams that are getting away with bloody murder or rape.
So the Q is taking the step to really try to eliminate fighting through rules. Is this something do we need to legislate fighting out of the game, or is this something we've talked about the trends, how it's trending down? Is this something that's going to eliminate itself within a decade?
No, I think it's going to be a fringe thing. I don't think it's going to ever go away 100%. But I do think it's going to be less than it is now. And I do think it is going to still be there. But I think they're going to remarket it without being loud about it to where it's like, could happen tonight. i.e. Wilson and the Rangers. This is the first one that pops in my head the last year. Like, everybody was tuning in like, what's going to happen at the face-off? Got it out of the way, mostly. Moved on. As far as the juniors and the minors, probably gone. But as far as the NHL, I think it'll still barely be there for at least for the next 10 years anyway. But I do think it's deliberate, obviously. Yeah. I think it's gonna,
I think what happens in the minors is going to be interesting because that's where you're going to have guys who are willing to do anything to take that next step up. And if the NHL is looking for that, then, those guys will learn fighting at the ECHL, AHL level as opposed to in the junior level. So how those minor leagues react, I'm interested to see what happens.
Yeah, I think of a guy like Bobby Robbins, being around Providence and Boston a lot, career minor leaguer, mostly in the ECHL, then made it to Providence as a tough guy, got a cup of coffee up in Boston. That's how he made it to Boston. They needed a tough guy for a couple games. He came up, ended up getting a couple fights, got a concussion, ended his career. That'll be interesting. Hey, here's something we didn't mention. One of the legislators who had a hand in drafting these rules for the Q, Enrico Ciccone. Remember that name?
Mm-hmm.
No.
Look him up. He was a tough guy back in the.
Why don't you tell me who it is?
I don't know his exact stats, but late 90s, but he was a fighter.
He was a
himself.
fighter. Okay.
Yeah. That's interesting.
So we need to know.
Isn't it?
All right. Well, the future is going to be interesting this year in the Q, and we'll see exactly how that.
Oh, Mark's ending it. Are we done, Mark? Mark's doing the outro, huh?
That's all right.
Okay,
Mark can do the outro because I was about to start the outro myself. I think we've come to the logical end of this discussion.
I guess it could be an outro, but I was just saying, it's like, here's the thing. This is sort of this, unprecedented rule, correct? I mean, I know you have college hockey, but in the juniors, we'll see what the ramifications are. Will people not miss it? Will you just move on without it? I mean, have other sports done anything like this? I mean, look at baseball. They set up some new rules and people like them.
Well,
I don't know. I think I have a theory. I think they should swap and baseball should implement the fight.
Right? Have I told you my theory about baseball fights, Dan?
It's on purpose.
No, but baseball fights, instead of having everybody charge out.
Exactly, Dave.
You want to fight, you want to charge them out. Okay, you and the pitcher one-on-one. Anybody else who comes in, treat them like a third man in hockey. So it's a one-on-one fight there in the mound. The 4 umpires can break it up.
There you go.
What was that fight with the Sox in Cleveland the other day where the guy just dropped him? He got 2 shots in, and then the one guy swung and he just went boom.
Anderson and
like
Ramirez.
A real punch, and I was like, well, all right.
He wasn't even looking. That was the luckiest punch in the history of the world.
He wasn't too.
He wasn't even looking.
Getting turned around by the crowd that was coming towards him, and just hooked him and caught him perfect. I even saw the little bubble with the 100 points go up as he went down.
You saw the little birdies going around the other guy's head.
Yeah. The Sonic the Hedgehog coins popped right out.
What's the Mario Brothers noise when you get hit and you go from big to small there?
Oh.
Yeah, there you go. You can't do it.
Oh, all right. So I can't think of a more logical place to end our discussion on hockey fighting.
And get Dave out of here on time.
With a bit than talking about a baseball brawl. So there we go. So everyone, thanks for joining us. I hope you enjoyed our discussion. And like Mark said, it'll be interesting to see where this goes.
I just want to say I don't care if Dave gets out of here on time.
No, none of us did, because Dave was just going to leave anyway. At some point, Dave was just going to be gone.
That's why I don't care. It's a big boy to leave.
Dan, where can our listeners follow you?
Dan Law, 8-3.
All right, Mark, sorry to keep you awake there.
Jesus.
I'm still jet lagged.
You got any stadium journeys planned for the next couple of weeks before we get together again? And where can our listeners follow you?
Detroit. I'll be up for the Tigers game, and if I can coincide it with a Lions preseason, who knows? It just, like I was telling Dave, it just depends on my buddy what weekend he can get off. So, yeah, Detroit. I'm thinking anything else. That's a good question. I just did Seattle. Before that, I did Ultimate Disc, the Ultimate United Disc League, or the American United Disc League, which I had a blast. But we'll talk about that on a recap. That was a lot of fun. But yeah, until then, just I'll be editing videos, putting them up on my Ballpark Hunter page on YouTube. Check that out. Check me out on Twitter, Ballpark Hunter, and I have a cool article coming up on Stadium Journey. I think in a couple days about the Seattle hot dog. It's a thing. Read all about it.
Mark's in
Thanks.
jail again.
Dave, what do you got planned for the next couple of weeks, and where can our listeners follow you?
Well, my daughter is itching to go to Oklahoma and Arkansas because she's never been to Oklahoma and Arkansas, and she is collecting states.
Why does she? Oh, collected states. Okay.
Yeah. So
Why would you want to go if you're not collecting
So
states?
she doesn't really care what we do there. So we're going to see baseball. So
Nice.
Hey!
Oklahoma
There
City
you go.
Dodgers, Arkansas Travelers, and Northwest Arkansas Naturals.
Oh, Walmart
And you can follow all of that on Twitter, Instagram, Threads, YouTube at ProFan9.
All right, let's see. What do I have planned for the next couple of weeks? Tomorrow night, I will be working the Savannah Bananas game at Campanelli Stadium. I wasn't going to work, but then they just asked me, "Can you come in and work the
That's
scoreboard?"
a lie. You were doing it the whole time.
Hey, try to meet up with the young professor. He's their MC. He'll be with the real gaudy jacket and the
Well,
blonde.
I'm sure that I will be in contact with all those guys, being part of
meet up with
their game time presentation tomorrow night.
Yeah.
At first, they had asked me to come in and work in the concession stands. I'm like, no, those days are long gone for me.
I'm not 20 years old anymore.
I'm not
Thank you.
spending 6 hours on my feet after spending 8
No.
hours at work. No.
Nope.
They
Not
said,
for
how about
free.
being an usher? I said, maybe. Can I sit down and ush? No, like, how about doing your regular job? I said, there you go. Now you got me.
That's better.
Let's see what else I got going on. I'm kind of in a lull now that baseball season's ended for me until football season starts. Probably hit up a Woo Sox game since I got all these rain checks from the Stadium Journey convention. I got to start using a couple of them, so I'll probably hit up the Woo Sox this weekend. But that's about it. You can follow my Stadium Journeys on Twitter and Instagram at PuckmanRI. And it's almost time for me to be Puckman again. And remember, fans, you can find all of our 2,500 stadium reviews, news items, and other feature stories on the website, the mothership, stadiumjourney.com. Is that a question mark? Oh, Mark is frozen. That's what that is.
I'm just kidding.
No, he wasn't frozen. It was nobody was
Hey,
fooled.
you punk.
No, don't fall for no.
I fell. He got me. Wah. That's it. We need to fight. Oh, we can't.
We can't. Pull your helmet off right now.
Yeah, Dave's doing the old baseball fight there.
He's doing the Alex Semin.
Connect with us on our social media channels at Stadium Journey. To find audio versions of the Stadium Journey podcast, search HIAC Talk Radio Network wherever you look for your favorite podcasts. You're looking for video simulcasts of our podcast? Go to our YouTube page, Stadium Journey's YouTube page, that is. And join us for live streams every other Tuesday night at 7 Eastern at danlaw.tv. Thanks for those of you who are in our live studio audience this evening. We will all be back in 2 weeks. That will put us at August 29th, or in my notes here, 29 with an ST at the end.
29th.
My grammar is goodly. That's the 29th. Well, we'll be joined by our old friend. We'll be joined by our old friend, Andrew Bowes, to discuss the shenanigans that has been college football realignment. That should be an interesting discussion.
Yeah, that'll be fun.
I think there'll be like 3 more new conferences by that time or something like that.
Probably.
Oh, yeah, that's a
As always, thanks everyone for your support, for joining us tonight. For Dan, Mark, and Dave, this is Paul, wishing you all safe stadium journeys and close games. Hope to see you on the road again real soon.